something. Just tell me what it's like.
Go ahead.
This is David Badin. I direct the Israel Resource News Agency and the Center for Near East Policy Research. I now celebrate 44 years in Israel. I think the time has come to explain what's going on over here in Israel, because it doesn't make sense. A lot of things don't make sense. When you carry out a military campaign and you completely demolish the ability of the other side to make war, it would seem that you've won the war. Doesn't that seem logical? Well, that's not what's going on over here. What's going on here is that it's a war that's been going on for 66 years, ever since the Arab League declared a full state of war, a war of extermination against the state of Israel in their new state, in their nation state. And the decision was made to have a total jihad, a full-scale war, a holy war, to destroy Israel, back in 1948. Now, in the popular imagination, we think that the war was fought over a period of a year and a half, and then resolved. What we don't realize is that every conflict in Israel, every battle, has been finished with a military victory by Israel, but at the same time only a ceasefire. What's wrong with the ceasefire? Well, in the Arabic context, a ceasefire is no more than a hudna or a tahdiyah, a respite, a temporary respite from fighting again, where you reorganize and just fire again. And that's what's been going on since 1948 to the present day. Now, Israel's current adversaries, the Hamas, who is the strongest adversary, small, relatively small, but well-organized religious movement amongst Palestinian Arabs, who very much declare that they will carry through the purposes of the Arab League from 1948 to destroy Israel. Now, what does this mean to destroy Israel? First things first, I guess you might call it the two-stage solution. Not the two-state solution, but the two-stage solution. First, to weaken Israel, and to weaken Israel's resolve, and to do it very, very slowly, and very carefully, and systematically. As, in a sense, the weaker party militarily. And that's what's going on over here. Because the Arabs, working with a small Arab group, in this case in Gaza, working at a severe military disadvantage in terms of numbers, in terms of training, but psychological warfare on their part seems to be working. Because if you look at Israel's goal is very simple. They want to have peace and quiet, or at least quiet for a number of years. They're willing to settle for a hudna, a temporary quiet, because they believe that will bring to a more lasting peace. The Arabs, on the other hand, especially the Hamas, see things in the short term, but also in the long term. The short term is to weaken Israel's resolve, doing so with what we call low-intensity warfare, with short-range missiles, sometimes even longer-range missiles, but the kind of missiles that will instill fear in the entire population, and at the same time cause some casualties, and cause the tourist ministry, the tourist operation, the tourist trade in Israel to dwindle to almost nothing after a short amount of time. From their point of view, from the Hamas Arabs' point of view, they've won the first stage of battle. What's important to understand at the same time is that this first stage in battle was fought after 10 years of preparation. What do I mean by 10 years of preparation? Well, when Israel decided to withdraw its troops and civilians from Gaza, from the first day that happened, the Hamas, which took over officially only 6 months or 8 months later after the Israeli withdrawal, they've been making these plans for a military exercise, and even though it was illegal for Israel to hand over any data, any territory, any gratuities, any property to a terrorist organization, because that is against the law. They basically did exactly that. And we pointed out on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, a website magazine 9 years ago, that what happened was Israel withdrawing from Gaza created a vacuum, but also created a terrorist state, with the dominant party being the Hamas. Now they've tried Israel on 2 other occasions since 2010, actually three other occasions, for 3 different ceasefires. And those ceasefires, which were barely hudnas, did not lead to anything but the strengthening of the resolve of the other side. So that strengthening of the resolve is in the context of a longer war, the longer, how shall I say, trek towards victory from their point of view. And even if they lose, they win, meaning if they have lots of casualties and in a very difficult situation, well, number one, they've succeeded in hurting the Israel tourist trade tremendously, and number two, they now have a backer. Who's that backer? Qatar. All over the years, the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, were always thinking of having and dreaming of having a strong Arab country behind them where there would be no problem. That's what they have now in Qatar. And not only is Qatar backing them, but Qatar is also one of the prize investments of the West and of the United States. And that's where the military high command is. So that's the first issue to be dealt with. And the second issue, which I want to relate to in terms of Gaza, is the fact that what almost everyone's forgotten is that at least 2/3 of the population of Gaza live in refugee camps. Refugee camps under the premise and promise of the right of return. To where? To the places they lost in 48. Even if they didn't themselves live there, but their grandparents lived there. And they've grown up with the notion that the Israelis came in, killed their grandfathers, killed their grandfathers, raped their grandmothers, and they took the area for themselves. And the right of return was embedded in a General Assembly resolution 194, which had been basically created by Count Foch-Bernadotte, who was the UN ambassador who was later murdered or killed, depending on your point of view. It was in September 48 by the Stern Underground. And what that determined was the idea of the inalienable right of Arabs to go back to where they came from in 48, with the idea of right of return recognized not only by the United Nations, but by every nation that gives money to UNRWA to the people living in these refugee camps. They don't give money necessarily based on politics, but basically wanting to feed people. But what's fed on their imagination over the last 14 years, and we're speaking now in 2014, it was exactly 14 years ago that the PA created a new curriculum, new school books which are teaching the people, which have been adopted by UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency, teaching a whole new generation to take back their homes from 1948. So when they're attacking into the Western Negev, when the Arabs are attacking into the Western Negev from Gaza, they're doing so on the basis of wanting their homes back, of a jihad, a holy war for Zchut HaShiva, for the right of return, Al-Aida. And that is what's going on here. That's why the tenacity and their ability to fight is so strong, that no matter what military defeat they may have, they still will regroup to send another group of Arabs over here to do what needs to be done. To fight for their liberation of Palestine, of all of Palestine, and to do so with a certain tenacity that's not always understood in Israel. Combining the loyalty to right of return with the worship of Allah and traditional Arab tenacity that many people here do not understand. So that's what I'd like to say at this point, and we will be resuming soon. This is David Bedein reporting from the Israel Resource News Agency and the Center for Near East Policy Research in August 2014.